Uganda, oh, we lay our future in thy hand. United people, liberty together we always stand. Mungu twaomba uilinde Jumuiya Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.
Thank you very much, Peace. Once again, our guests, you're welcome to Uganda Media Center. My name is Emma Weretinka. I head the Department of International Relations, and I'm going to be your moderator this evening. I would like to request you to take your seats. Thank you very much. So, before we proceed, I would like to request my co-moderator, our Deputy Director, Mr. Katunji, to come and say a few remarks and introduce the reason why we are here, and then also invite our next speaker. So you're welcome.
Thank you, Emma. Good evening, everyone. You are welcome to Uganda Media Center. My name is Dennis Patrick Katunji. I'm the Deputy Executive Director here, and I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all of you. So, Honorable Minister of Energy and Mineral Development, Honorable Dr. Msenero, the Executive Director, Petroleum Authority, who has delegated Gloria Sebikari, the Head of Communications, is here. We've got the Director General of the Uganda Investment Authority, who has delegated his deputy, Mr. Martin Muhanji, is here too. I would like to welcome you and to highlight the mission of Uganda Vision, Uganda Media Center, is to deliver clear, timely, and truthful government communications to every citizen. Our vision, our mission, a well-informed citizenry actively participating in national development through transparent and effective government communication. So in line with that mandate of coordinating government media engagements, we have resumed these theme evenings, which had been interrupted. We had these arrangements in the past, but due to reasons beyond our control, we interrupted them. But I am happy to announce that we are resuming them. Most likely every Friday, end of month, we'll be putting together something like this on topical issues and that touch the national fabric of our country, transformation. With those remarks, I'd like to invite our Executive Director to give his remarks and to invite the Minister, and we'll proceed from there.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Emma. Let's give them a round of applause. They've done a great job. Honorable Musenero, welcome. Thank you. We want to see you as often as you can come by. You are a woman of big ideas, and we'd like to hear those ideas, want to capture them, want to share them with the rest of the country. Thank you very much to all of you for showing up. Uganda Investment Authority are very important strategic partners for us. They have been very supportive. Here at the Media Center, we understand our mission to be ensuring that Uganda is understood, first of all by Ugandans, and then also making sure that we take our rightful place in the world. And we believe that we will be driven by ideas. And so that's why it's very important that we have an evening like this, where Dr. Musenero comes and explains the energy sector to us. We engage with her and we understand where it's heading, where we are heading. We must remember that the ambition of this government is that we transform into a $500 billion economy. That is going to take a lot of effort. It's going to make sure that everything happens 10 times as it's happening right now, because the estimated GDP is at $69 billion. So there is a lot of work to do. How do we do it? How do we get there? Those are the reasons why we have an evening like this, an evening of interaction, an evening of engagement. We have students in this audience, madam. We have experts, we have journalists, and that will allow us to engage effectively. I must also add that we want to partner with the Ministry of Energy. I know you have a bit of money now. Please do not hesitate to spend some of it on the media center. We have done this without budget. We don't have money. It's a public secret, but we must say thank you very much to the government that has understood the need for communication and is giving us quite a bit of money this season. So we are excited about the possibilities. The media center is going to be championing one government, one voice. We need to be coherent, we need to be effective, and we need to make sure that people understand where this country is heading. And therefore, on that note, I have the single honor of inviting you, Dr. Musenero, to come and present your keynote address, which we shall then unpack and explore after you speak. Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause as she comes up.
Hello. I don't know how many of us grew up listening to Alan Kasuja on Focus on Africa. He's the very one. So I thought it was going to end Alan Kasuja, Focus on Africa. I want to just, before I begin to give my keynote speech, I want to congratulate the Media Center for this arrangement. I've been looking forward to a period when we can just come and articulate ideas, not coming to give press releases and articulate ideas. And I want to commit that as much as we need to communicate about Uganda to Ugandans and the world, I will be present. Now, coming back to our subject of today, for those who may not know me, I'm Dr. Monica Musenero Masanza, Minister for Energy and Mineral Development. The other day, somebody first introduced me as Minister for Science. I am really delighted today to be invited to join the discussion under the theme, From Wells to Wealth, how oil and gas can drive Uganda's tenfold growth. I will interpret tenfold growth in my keynote speech along the way. But I would like to say that this is a very, very useful theme, especially at this time, that we must engage about this subject of oil and gas, which is one of the subsectors under my ministry. Today, my focus is going to be to drive us to how do we actually extract value from this black gold, as they call it. How do we extract the tenfold growth, which I prefer to call the qualitative leap of the economy, when the economy begins to grow very, very fast. And the theme of today does not assume that we have already got the wealth. It acknowledges that there is a journey between the existence of a petroleum resource in our country and the creation of national wealth. A journey which we have discovered, but we have not yet completed. It's a journey that we are working on. Between the resource, which we now can quantify with some degree of certainty, and for which we have built infrastructure, we have built the knowledge, but we have not yet completed the discussion and the understanding of how do we translate this into benefit to an average Ugandan. Because between this resource, which we started from not knowing what to do with the oil, and now we are very close to turning on our first oil. And the wealth that we expect to drive our economy tenfold or even more, there lies a conversation that we must now have. And I am privileged to be part of this conversation as head of sector where this resource lies. Oil has not arrived in our economy without a history. Over the past decades, this is a nation that has demonstrated the ability to grow and ability to transform from one kind to another. His Excellency the President has often talked about the 4 phases on how we have grown. This is a nation which has moved from insecurity to security. We have restored peace, we have had reconstruction, we have had economic expansion. Even when you look at the rate at which we are growing, by the time we started writing the ideas of tenfold growth, we were at 50. That's why it is 50 times 10. But today we are talking about already at 69. So we have had economic expansion, growth by expansion, and we have had an expanding private sector and a long phase of building our social and economic overhead capital. We have built roads, we have put up electricity, we have built schools, we have built health facilities, educational institutions. However, we are yet to hit what we call socio-economic transformation. And it is socio-economic transformation that is going to take us there. And therefore, my keynote this evening focuses on how we can take oil to drive socio-economic transformation. A road is a great asset, but it is not transformation simply because it has been constructed. The value of that road lies in the production and commerce that it enables. A megawatt of electricity is a great product to have. However, it is not transformation simply because it has been generated. Its value depends on what it powers. Similarly, education in itself is fantastic for us to have, but it is not transformation because it has enrolled many people. It's a great thing for us to have, but there's something more that we need to do. Each phase of development creates a platform. And once the platform is built, the historic task changes from constructing it to converting that task into a productive power. Now, Uganda stands at that point of transition. It is at precisely this moment that our oil has arrived. Because the tenfold growth signals the beginning of a new phase of the knowledge economy, of the qualitative leap of socioeconomic transformation, not merely growth. So this tenfold growth strategy seeks to expand the economy 10 times up to 500 billion by 2040. And it describes this rightly as a qualitative leap rather than merely a numerical one. So it is not just going to be we have grown numbers, but we must ask ourselves whether the size we reach, when we reach that size, what kind of economy are we going to have? Are we going to have a larger version of today's economy? Exporting raw materials, as we are doing now, importing the technologically enabled products into the country, importing the sophisticated products into the country, our incomes rising while our demand stimulates industries located elsewhere. A qualitatively different economy builds a deeper industrial capability in this country, stronger domestic enterprises, more sophisticated exports, and a growing power to create and retain value through knowledge. This is why we ask and come to discuss the pathway through which oil wealth, as it begins to flow from the ground, it can then lead us to the socio-economic transformation, which will signal the tenfold growth, or in my language, the qualitative leap. The growth is an increase in the quantity of the economic activity. That's why we have given it a number of 500 billion. And it could occur through extraction. We could harness more resources from the ground. We could produce more coffee and sell it, but that's not the goal of the qualitative leap, which is indicated by this tenfold growth. It is the transformation, the change in structure of our economy, the quality and the capability of our people. And it becomes visible when we begin to do things that we have not been able to do before in our economy. When we increase our capacity to produce new technologies, when we increase, we invert what we export from raw materials to value-added goods. I want to give us an example of an African nation that has had a very great resource like oil, before I come back to answer the question of today. And this nation is called Botswana. Botswana shows us the distinction of an African resource, which is well managed and grows the economy, and an African resource, which results in a qualitative transformation of the economy. Botswana has been renowned as one of the greatest examples of excellent management of natural resources on the continent. It captured a significant national interest in its diamonds. They managed the revenues with precision of discipline, and it raised incomes of the citizens. I think the last time I checked, their GDP per capita was $6,000. And they built infrastructure, and they built schools, they provided social services. Yet decades later, diamonds still account for more than 90% of export earnings of this nation. And something happened, totally unexpected, happened in the market. Those using knowledge economy, using knowledge, they invented artificial diamonds. And the artificial diamonds began to undercut the value of diamonds in the market. And the income from diamonds dropped after no fault of this economy. And they found themselves structurally exposed because the economy was still being financed with direct revenues from a natural resource. This story is not a story of failure. It's the story of an important success that also reveals the journey Uganda must walk if we are going to power our economy using the oil wealth and get transformation from it. Good resource management will ask whether the country negotiated well, and these are questions that we are asking. Did we negotiate well? Was the revenue well collected and use the proceeds well for public welfare? And I know as soon as oil starts coming out, citizens will start demanding, why can't we use our oil money for this? However, transformation of the economy, which will give us the growth we crave, the qualitative transformation that we crave, asks a different set of questions. Whether the resource changed the productive structure of our economy. Did it reduce future dependence on the original endowment? Because diamonds and oil are known as non-renewable resources, but also because they are products of nature, and the world is growing using the knowledge economy, they are susceptible to being impacted by those whose economies depend on knowledge, who are able to create artificial diamonds, even when you still have your huge deposits that you depended on. Of course, it is the same for us. As our oil approaches, there is uncertainty in the market. What is the future of oil? Every year, we have people demonstrating, saying we don't want oil, and yet Uganda must benefit in the long term from our oil. So Uganda must deliberately plan, engage, execute transformation of the economy using this oil base, if we are going to sustain the benefits from this endowment. Every society, now I want to talk about what I've been referring to. And I'm a very great advocate of socioeconomic transformation rather than just growth. Growth is an increase in the quantity of the same, while transformation changes the form. It changes the form. So this development journey that we want to undertake with our oil must be cognizant that every nation and every country and every people, every community has three assets. The first asset are the natural resources, which is a possibility held within nature, like now we are talking about oil, and the value of oil is now dependent on oil markets, on the value they are willing to pay us per barrel, and we will calculate what we benefit from the oil And we'll put figures like Uganda, when you at its peak, will be earning so much. And we keep praying that the world prices will go up. The second asset that we have is the human capital, the people, the intelligence, and the agents through which the endowment is converted. And the difference between two countries within similar endowments is really the resource. Because we have seen nations without a resource, but with knowledge and the capacity to transform other people's resources into value, they have soared above us who have the resources. So it is usually the depth of the people, the depth of thinking of the people, and how they view this endowment is the one that is going to make the difference. And the third asset is time. The timing of the season, a strategic window, because endowments are finite and the markets and technologies and alternatives are always moving. If we had had our oil out in the past few months, we would have harvested a huge wallet. We don't know what is going to come. So our challenge now is how do we make sure that we protect our oil from the effects of time, from the effects of fluctuations, and the value of that is in us, the people. It is only the human being who has the knowledge asset to transform. And so whether we are going to harness and achieve the theme, building how this oil and gas can drive Uganda's tenfold growth, is dependent on how us, the people of Uganda, receive this endowment. If we see it as something to consume, to sell and consume in its raw form, I can promise you the oil will get finished. We will have built roads. We may have built schools. We may have built other hospitals. And when the oil gets finished, it will begin to go down. And in many societies that have not used the oil for socioeconomic transformation, a term was coined known as the oil curse. Uganda intends to make oil a great blessing. A great blessing. And so our question is, our oil must fuel socioeconomic transformation. The oil must inspire us to examine it deeper, but also to examine the other assets that we have, so that we are able to transform the structure of our economy, where the knowledge must be deep in the disciplines that control the petroleum production system. You notice that in the current production, we have literally imported everything. Will the next worlds also import 100%? Will we have acquired the capacity in our population to do greater, to build the knowledge of this population more, so that a decade from now we'll have Ugandan companies as oil exploration and mining and extraction companies? Will we use the knowledge that we have acquired and this experience to build the capacity of our nation? Or are we going to just observe and set monitoring on how the oil resources are being used? Secondly, oil is a raw material. That means it has a lot of products in it. Our universities transforming, changing, not just to appreciate and observe the process of oil extraction and be able to participate peripherally. Are they training individuals who learn to do research in materials development using the oil base? So that instead of selling a barrel of oil from the ground at, how much is it now? Around 83. Can we multiply the value of that barrel 10 times by adding value? Can we multiply that such that even if the oil is finished, the material scientists we have developed will be able to develop new materials from other natural resources that we have? Will we have built industries that are not dependent on oil, but whose base was funded by oil, such that the finishing of oil or the exhaustion of oil or whatever the future of oil is based on the current energy transition, we can stand on a foundation saying oil fueled us, but we no longer depend on oil. How many products will you be able to develop now? Nations that started their industrial development, like the United Kingdom, they started the first industrial revolution, which drove coal. They used the coal mines and iron ore were the driving raw materials. Right now, when you go in those nations, they are still developed. They still have a high standard of living. They still have good employment rates, but both the iron ore and the coal are no longer a significant part of the economy. And so we must set our agenda right as the oil begins to come out. I must say I'm very proud of the team at Energy. We have moved from literally zero knowledge from this particular industry to where we are. But now we set a new base. The chase is no longer for us to find where the oil is. We know how to do that. The chase is no longer how to get the oil out of the ground. We know how to do that. The chase is for us to extract value. So we would like to see that knowledge grows very deep. Don't just study petroleum studies for extraction. We are now studying petroleum studies for creation of new products from the petroleum, not just even the tar that other people are making. Can we jump onto this wagon of the fourth industrial revolution and we use the oil money to fuel us to go far? And I speak specifically to the young generation. The knowledge that you acquire now must be deep in the disciplines that control petroleum production systems. I would love to see a Ugandan company coming and saying, I am going to supply these components. And we are making them now locally because you have seen them. So that in the next cycles, we have our participation. The knowledge must be broad. It must spread through our universities, technical colleges, enterprises, and public agencies rather than resting in the hands of a few. It must change the way you live in your village. The knowledge must be integrated across geology, engineering, finance, law, and industrial policy, because many development failures arise not from absent knowledge, but from fragmented knowledge. The knowledge must be codified so that what we learn is retained in our institutions, in our standards institutions, in curricula, rather than departing with an individual or a contractor. We should not allow a contractor to come in the country and depart with all the knowledge, such that the next well, we are going to go to be so dependent on them. Uganda must participate in the petroleum economy, not merely as the geographical location of this resource, but as a society deliberately absorbing, integrating, and expanding the knowledge embedded in one of the world's most technically complex production systems. So let me now be concrete about what we really need to do at this time. 6 conversions must occur if we are going to benefit from this oil. Project demand must become a permanent Ugandan industry, not a temporary procurement opportunity. We should not be perennially working on procurement for the next exploration, for the next, we must, if we have been participating in this, how do we participate deeper so that we develop our capacity to do this? Imported technology must become domestic mastery, not a service imported indefinitely. A worker's participation must become transferable scientific, technical, or managerial capability, because that's the only way we are going to transfuse. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no law that says only certain countries have the ability to learn oil exploration or have the ability to learn oil extraction. We must be increasingly getting deeper into the industry so that we retain a greater value from this resource. A petroleum contract must become a Ugandan firm able to compete in African markets. Petroleum revenue must become assets that keep generating income, not temporary expenditure. And a sophisticated infrastructure must become connection to the wider economy, not an efficient enclave. That once that is done, Uganda does not know how to do it. And we must always continuously source it. These conversations form a chain and a break anywhere that weakens. They break anywhere that weakens. Export without industrial conversion and the higher value production happens elsewhere. I want to thank His Excellency for insisting that we have a refinery. Within the refinery lies a lot of the value we can retain as a nation. I want to share the strategic direction of the ministry to ensure that this happens. Because if I just come here and talk and talk and talk, then there is no strategic direction. So within this context, I have taken responsibility as the leader of this sector to turn these resources into everlasting development and permanent transformation for our economy. Whereas regulation, licensing, infrastructure development, and service development remain fundamental responsibilities, and they must be carried out with increasing effectiveness, but they must now be located within a higher national purpose. The sector must connect resources to knowledge, energy to productive activity, minerals and petroleum endowments to industries, major investments to Ugandan capability, and financial flows to national value retention. To make this direction practical, I place 3 questions before the country. I've placed it before all the subsectors in the ministry, and now I place them. These are not slogans. They are analytical disciplines through which we must interrogate every major petroleum decision, every investment, and every institution that comes up. The 3 questions are, where is the money? Where is the money? But where are the industries? Socioeconomic transformation entails industrial transformation. And where is the energy? Let me briefly talk about the 3 questions, then I will close. The tendency is to look only at taxes, royalties. When we ask where is the money, we're just saying where are the royalties, where are the taxes, where are the dividends of our investment. Those must be collected and completely protected rigorously and invested prudently. But the petroleum economy will generate far more value than what enters the treasury. Through finance, insurance, engineering, procurement, logistics, technology, professional services, and trade, within margins, wages, interest, returns, and at every single stage. We must be completely aware of the flow of money across the pipeline. From the underground, how much money has been sunk underground by the time that oil reaches there at the surface, and where has that money gone? Is it retained in Uganda? Or what percentage is retained in Uganda? Is it growing our economy, or it has exited? We must trace and complete that flow of money. Who finances the system and who earns from that financing? Who owns the technology and intellectual property? How much of so-called local expenditure is genuine domestic production? And how much is the resale of imports? How much lives through imports, external contracting, and profit repatriation? And critically, what does the captured value become? Money that lives immediately through consumption differs from money that becomes productive infrastructure in our nation. In other words, we are going to become more mathematical at every stage. Ekibalo at every stage. And the chibalo and the numbers in detail must be before our eyes as we cultivate, as we form the petroleum. So the purpose is not to deny investors legitimate returns. Uganda needs capital, and we encourage the investors. We encourage technology importation and expertise. The purpose is to organize partnerships in which investor success also depends, but also the purpose is for Uganda to identify other sources of money. Do you know Nseke? The drinking straws that you can insert and suck some, and when we are intentional, we can do that. The second one is, where are the industries? The presence of an oil industry does not mean the economy has industrialized. Oil drives and fuels many industries, and we want to make sure that these industries are identified by Ugandans by being bystanders and standing in ignorance around oil and just watching eco and watching the flow of oil, instead of us interrogating the oil and interrogating everything surrounding this precious product and being able to build industries very innovatively. We should not live in ignorance. And I want to challenge the nation to think through all the byproducts and the products that we can transform them into. So when we do this, we'll be able to deliberately develop petrochemical industries, fertilizers, industrial chemicals, LPG, plastics. We'll be able to participate in fabrication, laboratories, logistics, specialized finance, industrial data systems. I've said that slowly so that we know it's a great resource. We'll be able to transform this oil from simply being a raw material to an industrial driver. And lastly, where is the energy? We have had many African nations producing oil and importing the same products at a higher, much higher price. Their own oil goes, it pays the logistics for transportation to other countries, and it pays the logistics to come back. So we pay transportation twice when you go to the pump. So we needed to make sure that we are very intentional. We needed to measure how we can quickly and rapidly transform this oil resource into energy at source. And as I have said, the most favorite part of this oil industry for me is the refinery. And we pray that Ugandans, you will support the refinery so that, one, we are able to use our petroleum at source. The gap between the transportation to take it, hit the pipeline, and then bring it back here, that will be our national gain. But not only that, we are also able to drive so many things around this energy. And so it is this thinking and energy and knowledge that is going to drive. We can now answer the question of this briefing. Oil and gas will drive tenfold growth, not because Uganda produces and sells petroleum, but if we convert the financial, technological infrastructure and knowledge flows of the petroleum economy into capability that spreads across the whole economy. Revenue into productive capital that generates income beyond petroleum era. Project demand into Ugandan industries rather than a market for imports. Participation into transferable technology. Its planning, negotiation, and coordination into a national learning platform that strengthens our capability to conceive, finance, and govern every other complex undertaking when this cycle reinforces itself. We shall measure success from our oil when, not just by measuring the barrels that have been extracted, our national scorecard must tell the country how much value Uganda has benefited from the oil. Ladies and gentlemen, Uganda's entry into the petroleum industry is a historic achievement, but it also signals a complete shift in our thinking. And this thinking is for you, the Ugandan, the young, the middle-aged, and the elderly, so that we can transform our thinking and harness the knowledge and infuse it into this petroleum industry so that we are able to insert drinking straws in the pipeline. That is the meaning of a qualitative leap. And that is how Uganda must move from simply wealth to wealth. The wealth must flow into every Ugandan across the nation. Whether you are in the oil region, or you are in Karamoja, or you are in the east where no oil has been, because knowledge, assets transform society. For God and my country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I want to reassure our audience that this was a keynote, so don't expect that all our panel will be taking that length of time. It's going to be interactive. And when you have people of this caliber, like our Honorable Minister, we have an audience that has the same caliber to probe and ask questions. So you'll have that opportunity. And Honorable Musenero has been one of the lucky ministers. She runs the transformative ministries from science and technology now to energy and minerals. How lucky are you, Honorable? I would like to take this opportunity to introduce James Opito, who is the coordinator of Civil Society Coalition on Oil and Gas. You're welcome. I also want to recognize Agaba Maron, who is the Executive Director Anti-Corruption Coalition of Uganda. You are welcome. The way we want to run it now is we're going to have brief remarks from our distinguished panelists here, and after that we'll have a Q&A. Prime your questions, you can probe what they say, and I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Martin Muhanji. And I'll give every member of our panel here 5 minutes, not beyond 5 minutes. This is the Deputy Executive Director, Deputy Director General of Uganda Investment Authority. You're welcome.
The Honorable Minister of Energy and Mineral Development, our strategic partner, the Media Center, our media fraternity, our colleagues from ministries, departments, and agencies here, domestic investors who may be here or listening in, and foreign investors, thank you very much for this opportunity that you have given us this evening to contribute to the discussion of a very strategic sector to our economy in moving us from 50 billion to 500 billion in 10 years. Uganda Investment Authority has been invited to discuss two key questions. The first question or contribute to the two key questions. The first question is what are the opportunities that exist in the oil and gas sector, and what is UAE doing to support Ugandans and foreign investors to participate in this strategic sector? And the second question is about the tenfold growth strategy and how is UAE contributing to the oil and gas sector in the tenfold growth strategy. The tenfold growth strategy seeks to expand Uganda's economy 10 times. That is the simplest I can put it. From United States dollars 50 billion to United States dollars 500 billion in 10 years. Oil and gas sector falls under mineral-based industrialization component. We have 4 channels of contribution that we shall receive from the oil and gas sector. The first contribution will be recognized from exports of crude oil exports, which will increase export earnings and strengthen Uganda's balance of payment. That's the first contribution. The second contribution will be from government revenues, specifically in taxes, royalties, license fees, and production sharing revenues. Third area, from value addition. Value addition arising from refinery and specifically from petrochemical industries. This will support the plastic value addition, the fertilizer, the paints, the packaging, the textiles, and the construction materials. And lastly, but not the least, employment of Ugandans and the local content support. Ugandans and Ugandan companies will participate through jobs, through contracts, through skill development, and technology transfer. These are very critical in supporting the 10-fold growth strategy. So the next question is the question I'm going to answer. What are the opportunities and what is UIA doing? Opportunities are along the following areas. We have direct petroleum-related opportunities. What are they? Consultancy services in areas of engineering. Ugandans are trained, the Honorable Minister has mentioned it. Environmental management opportunities. Construction opportunities. We have mentioned the key infrastructure developments ongoing and which are upcoming in refinery, in pipeline, in storage infrastructure. Drilling support opportunities. This could come through either foreign investors, local investors, but at the same time through joint venture partnerships. Transport and logistics, and Ugandans are already in that sphere. Infrastructure maintenance support opportunities. The next segment of opportunities is business opportunities. The food sector. Accommodation, logistics, security, financing, insurance, legal and tax accounting services. These are available opportunities for Ugandans. The next segment, downstream opportunities. Fuel distribution, lubricants, aviation fuel, service stations. Next is long-term manufacturing opportunities. UIA, in a partnership with Uganda National Oil Company, supports and promotes the Kabarega, I hope I'm right, Kabarega Industrial Park, to promote fertilizer, plastics, chemicals, among others. Employment opportunities. I've mentioned engineers, geologists, technicians, welders, and procurement professionals. In summary, oil and gas sector is not only a source of revenue, it is an opportunity to build industries, develop Ugandan enterprises, create skilled employment, and finance a wider economic transformation envisaged under the tenfold growth strategy. I await your questions. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. I would like to call upon Gloria from the Petroleum Authority of Uganda to make her remarks, and as brief as you can.
Thank you very much, Dennis. The Honorable Minister and my fellow colleagues on the panel, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening. Yes, a bit of energy, it's a Friday. I would like to thank the ED Uganda Media Center and his team for giving us this very important platform. The Honorable Minister's keynote address was very rich. It has a lot of thought leadership for us. I see a lot of veteran journalists and civil society members who have followed the sector for the past 10, 20 years. And so I think the thought leadership that the minister has given us is a way for us to rethink some of the things that we've discussed over the years, but also remember that the journey is still long. We are always asked fast oil, fast oil, fast oil. Today we are not talking about fast oil. We are talking about the value. So I'll just share a few thoughts in the 4 minutes I have based on some of the principles that the minister highlighted. Our projects, that's the Tilenga, Kingfisher, and the East African Crude Oil Pipeline projects, represent one of the largest industrial developments in our country, but also in the East African region, $20 billion worth. And so the significance goes beyond just talking about oil production, but sustaining this wealth that we have below the ground and sustaining it to even longer than its lifespan, because as rightly said, it's a finite resource. So as the Petroleum Authority of Uganda, our role is to oversee, to make sure that we are meeting our laws and regulations and international obligations, but also to contribute to sustainable development and the vision of the country for us to achieve our tenfold growth. So the foundation, we believe that the foundation has been set. We love to talk about the achievements that have been made and the numbers that you may have heard many times, but even more important is how are these numbers translating into what the Honorable Minister has spoken to us about today. How are they going beyond the drilling, beyond the exploration, to create innovation, to bring the young people out? So my 3 or 4 thoughts are these. We have the oil and gas sector is now contributing close to 70% of Uganda's foreign direct investment. From I think about 2006 when commercial discoveries were made, about 12.3 billion has been invested to date, and an additional 2.7 billion expected during 2026. Importantly, this is very strategic for our national economy because these benefits are not limited to these figures. What has this investment translated to the people? First of all, tax revenue, as Martin highlighted. We are contributing both tax and non-tax revenue to the tune of close to 1.5 billion in taxes. Now, these taxes are being translated into long-lasting infrastructure, seed funding, for example, for Karuma Dam that is powering, that is giving us energy in a country came from the oil and gas tax revenues. We also have the magnificent Hoima City Stadium. Uganda is going to host AFCON, a big tourism opportunity for the country. The funding came from the Petroleum Fund. So the foundation is there. As we look towards receiving the revenues when we start production, there will be significantly more than what we've seen in the past years, close to 1 to 2.5 billion annually. So how are these revenues, as they come into the national coffers, going to support this durable infrastructure in terms of education, in terms of healthcare? And I think the president has been clear. Oil revenue is not consumption. It is revenue that will be used for building infrastructure for the country. Secondly, Martin mentioned national content. If we wait for fast oil only without talking about national content, then we'll have likely missed the point of it all. A country like Norway that's always highlighted as the example of what to do to transform oil and gas into wealth for the population. The first thing they looked at was how do we build local capacity? How do we support innovation? I know the Honorable Minister is very big on science, technology, and innovation. The technology that comes with the oil and gas is one that, in many instances, we are seeing for the first time in the country. So we must continue to emphasize technology transfer. We have the laws and regulations, even in the petroleum sector, where joint ventures are encouraged, companies are required to support educational institutions, and they are doing that. And so if the companies have done their part, for example, donating software that is used globally to the higher institutions of learning, how are the institutions prepared to ensure that the learners, the students, make the best use of this technology? Earlier this year, we were at Makerere University for our annual skills expo, and we challenged the students to, we had an exhibition and we challenged them to display some of their innovations. And it was amazing the things that the students were doing in their labs at the university. I just remember two that stood out. One was a group of students that had developed an ICT monitoring tool that can detect health, safety, and environment issues. You know, HSC is very keen oil and gas, safety first. And this tool could help detect oil spill monitoring. Another company by the students was also displaying, what did they call it? Biocycle energy. I think it's called biocycle energy. And they're looking at how they can use the byproducts from fuel, you know, that diesel that is not used, how they are recycling it to provide energy, how they are using water hyacinth to make products that can absorb oil in case of an oil spill. But this is at a small scale. So this is where we need to continuously invest. Look at our investors in the sector. We have very big companies working in the oil and gas sector. We want to see them support these young students to develop their different innovations. Dennis is looking at me. So lastly, I'll talk about energy security. The minister mentioned that energy is the backbone. Where is the energy coming from? The oil and gas sector is poised to also contribute to Uganda's energy mix. We plan to use our gas to produce LPG, cooking gas, as many people call it, to power our country, but also contribute to the East African needs. This is important because globally, there's been a push against oil and gas, but as a country, we've set our priority that oil and gas is part of our energy mix, and what value can be got from oil and gas in terms of energy. First is LPG, because a lot of us still have that kasigiri at home that we keep just in case. But if a number of us transition to gas, we are doing our part to address climate change. We are helping to stop the cutting down of trees, and we are also reducing the emissions and the health burden that comes from the smoke. So there's a lot of value than just us talking about when are we going to start production. It is very important for us to keep our eyes on the target, produce our oil and the revenues, but alongside that, ensure that you, our stakeholders, the media, civil society, rally with us to ensure that the sector is well understood, well portrayed, and we continue the path of sound governance, promoting strategic investment and strong institutions that promote meaningful participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gloria. Try to summarize. As I call on James Opito, who is from the civil society. You know what they say of the civil society? Me, I think of them as those who give constructive criticism, although other people think of Orugezi or something like that. But this one is one of the constructive criticisms. You are welcome to address this congregation, and I'm giving you 5 minutes. After this, we'll do the interaction question and answer.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank the minister present, colleague in the panel from Uganda Investment Authority and from the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. Ladies and gentlemen and the press, I want to thank you, and I bring you greetings from the Civil Society Coalition on Oil and Gas. We are hosted at ACCORD. ACCORD is Advocates Coalition for Development and Environment, and we host a coalition that brings in several stakeholders, including civil society budget advocacy group that works very closely with the Ministry of Finance to ensure that we are prudent in how we use our budgets. I am asked to speak on the aspect of how we can move from wealth to wealth, from wealth to wealth, and how we can escape the oil costs. And I am going to approach this in a rather optimistic perspective. First, I want to recognize the contributions we have made as a nation with the support of government to ensure that we have a robust oil and gas industry. To note this, we have the National Oil and Gas Policy, which has already been replaced with the National Petroleum Policy. And I think we participated in this event, and we are proud to call ourselves Ugandan for having accomplished a good job on that. We have attendant policies which support this, including the NEMA Act, the UA Act, and which have been very instrumental in seeing that the sector is a bit robust, and we civil society also play another eye in terms of checking whether the performances are being done well. We appreciate government in terms of enabling and making sure that there are enabling laws and regulations and plans in place. For example, the Petroleum Act, which is in place, another act which refers to the refining as well, which is in place, and most importantly, the Public Finance Management Act, which actually determines how we use the money from the petroleum fund. This is also supported with the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility, which is an important aspect in terms of describing how we can actually manage our oil resources. I thought I should say this to say government did a commendable job in that aspect. And we appreciate institutions we work with, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Water, Petroleum Authority, Uganda EI Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, Uganda National Oil Company. Wow, this is also a very upcoming, powerful company. And I think we need to give credit where it's due. In terms of all that which I have mentioned, I would want to move into the perspectives on the oil costs. You know, I want us to reflect on the fact that Uganda has already made tremendous strides in the sector. The economy since the baseline year of 2003, when we were at 50 billion US dollars, now we are at 69 billion US dollars. You can make the geometric projection. The geometric projection can actually tell you that if we work prudently, we can actually get to the 500 billion US dollars. But for us to do that, what must we do to ensure that we achieve? We have to take lessons from countries that have struggled with their natural resources. And I think Uganda stands a very good chance in terms of learning from those choices which were not made right, so that Uganda can make the right choice and do the right thing. And I think so far so good. The journeys we have walked, some of them have been thorny, but because when you are checking and to cause the balance, there should be some friction, and that friction, I believe they were valued friction. In terms of the paradox of the oil cost, I want to say that it's very tempting when we are all aware that we have abundance of resources, and then there is a temptation of spending a little bit more. And then year by year, that becomes an affinity, and it can actually give us the challenge which we call the oil cost, especially if the expenditure in the petroleum industry has created a boom in the sector, and it has marginalized the other sectors. I thank God that we are speaking about the oil cost at the time that the nation is also pushing at the tenfold growth strategy, which is being driven by what we now call it ATMS, agro-industrialization, tourism, mineral development, including oil and gas, and then science, technology, and innovation, which actually will be major drivers in our economy. Now, when we have to be sure that what we do as a nation contributes to this common good, we have to be very cautious about the need to diversify. Diversify the investments, the windfalls that we receive from the oil and gas sector, especially what we will have in the petroleum fund, should be able to help us move as a country and invest a little bit more and incrementally larger and larger into the other sectors. For example, agriculture, manufacturing, service sector, and all these other sectors, which are non-oil sectors. Remember, it is the non-oil sector budget performance that will determine how much you will invest into the non-oil and gas sector. And now when that non-oil and gas sector performs well, it actually means you now have a valid reason to draw reasonable amount from the petroleum fund, which from the petroleum fund. The petroleum fund will have two aspects. We have the consolidated fund, which will run the national budget, but we also have the petroleum investment reserve, which is meant for only investment in foreign markets to earn us safe income for the country. Because internal dynamics can actually create a shaking in the economy and can actually disrupt disrupt the economy, especially with inflation and also the risk of investing heavily in the petroleum sector, and other sectors are left. So to safeguard on that, there's a fiscal rule which the ministry and Bank of Uganda work together to put in place, and Bank of Uganda ensures that there is this proper management of the petroleum investment reserve. So a condition which I believe can be revised by government, but we pray that revision shouldn't be done in a rush, should be done based on proper analysis, that it is better to adjust. For example, you can only draw 0.8% of the previous annual budget, which is non-oil and gas budget, to put into the next financial budget to finance non-oil and gas sectors. And I believe if as a country we pick that path, it will help us to remain robust, but also cautious in terms of our spending. That caution will help us to prevent hyperinflation, which has occurred in other countries. It will also tame our appetite to invest in an infrastructure or other things that may not bring us the proceeds we need. I don't know how many minutes I'll have left. I want to summarize on accountability and on the side of strengthening governance and transparency. We need to have a robust accountability framework in place We are very excited as civil society that government has embraced the extractive industries transparency initiative, which has allowed us to report on the global, on our compliance on the performance on the global standard, and which I think we have so far received very good marks for that. But that should inspire us to do more. There are quite a number of recommendations from the EITI report that we are working together as civil society with the government to see that we actually embrace this. But we also believe that keeping an open space for dialogue, for communication, will allow citizens to be more free, more innovative, to come out with new ideas. And when there is freedom, when everyone is sure of what they are doing for their country, and when everyone is excited to do what it is that they are doing, when they are aware that their government will defend their rights through the principles in the Constitution, Article 28 of our Constitution, Article 39 of the Constitution, and the entire Chapter 4 of the Constitution should help us guide ourselves as a nation to move into a path that will allow us have enabling environment for all of us to participate in revamping our economy to ensure that we reach the tenfold growth strategy in 2040. I thank you.
Before I hand this to someone has just tested. Before I open this, I just want to read a question that was sent to me. And this session is going to be interactive. We'll ask questions if you have a comment, but we'll summarize because we are running out of time. And this is directed to the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. How much of the value chain, services, jobs, local content has actually been captured domestically so far compared to the element that is in foreign hands? That's a question to you, but you'll answer it later.
Yes. Thank you very much, our distinguished panel. My highlight from Mr. Opita, the remarks was, make the right choice, do the right thing. I think that was key for me in your speech. So before we can open the floor to questions, I would like to recognize this Makerere University Petroleum and Geology Society. Kindly raise up your hands. Their leader is there, president of the association. Thank you for coming. And also, before I also open to you, I have a direct question for the Minister of Energy and Mineral Development. Honorable Minister, if oil and gas is meant to help drive the tenfold growth, what does your ministry need from the rest of government, that is Ministry of Finance, Petroleum Authority of Uganda, UNOC, that will help you that they're not doing right now? What do you want them to do better to help us achieve the tenfold growth? Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. So, the floor is yours. Yes. POW, UNOC, all the agencies that are within the energy sector. Yes. So, okay. The ED has something to say, please.
Am I in the shot? Can you see me? Because I want to be on camera while asking this one. First of all, thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for your very rich submission. It was very illuminating indeed. My question is, communication. First of all, to PAU, are you feeling sufficiently supported in trying to explain the oil question to Ugandans? Number one. And to you, Honorable Minister, communication is one of the government of Uganda's biggest problems and challenges. People do not understand this oil thing, and if they don't understand it, how will they own it? So the question then becomes, what are you willing, or how far are you willing to go to ensure that communication is improved? And just for Luseke purposes, seeing that you brought it up, I want to declare that the Media Center is happy to collaborate with you to make sure that we achieve the answer to the question I just asked. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you very much, our ED. I think let's have a set of 4 questions and then they can answer them. Kindly come. If you are going to ask a question, you have to come here at the podium. You mention your name and the institution you're representing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, our panelists here. My name is Leonard Kamgisha Akida, a journalist from Parrots Media Online. During your presentation, Honorable Minister, you talked about the demonstrations that we have had. And I do understand that we still have a case involving some youth in Uganda that is still in court who were arrested protesting against ECOP. The same demonstrations or protests have happened even outside the country. Talking about driving the 10-fold program, how are we protecting and conserving the environment while we are promoting this oil project? Because I understand it's the reason, that is causing much of these demonstrations. And then too, it goes to the representatives from the CSOs. I don't know whether the coalition is failing on its mandate to bring on board all these NGOs and civil society organizations, because it's like some organizations are the ones funding these protests. Are they being left out? What are you doing to bring everyone on board to understand why we need this project, and to give it here from their side, why are they protesting, so that you can address all these challenges? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's keep our questions very brief because we are many.
We'll keep it very brief. My name is Ladu Ismail Musa, Nation Media Group. Honorable Minister, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the contribution of your sector towards the 10-fold growth agenda? Then I spoke to a number of, the last one, I spoke to a number of sector experts who believe that we are borrowing against oil. And that's the reason why everybody, international lenders are willing to, to give us money, but against our resource. Where does that leave your key message of economic transformation? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm Wabao Kenneth. I heard this lady talking about environment, and my question goes to her. I said I'm Wabao Kenneth. Okay, I'm a concerned citizen about environment. And my question is like this. I wanted to know the long-term strategy. Our Uganda's long-term strategy of emissions in oil and gas. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Isaac Aguma, the President, Makere University Petroleum and Geology Society. My question goes to the Honorable Minister. In your keynote speech, you emphasized the importance of knowledge transfer and capacity building, that Uganda's nationals will not be dependent for their next projects that after the oil exploration. But currently, like, our education system is so much theoretical. So, and this leaves many graduates with limited practical and industry-ready competences. So are there any practical measures that the ministry or government is putting in place in partnership with the education sector to make sure that they practicalize what we, the students, are studying, because that is very key in actualizing us not being so dependent on expatriate professionals and technology in the long run? How are there any practical measures that align with curricular changing? Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you very much. And lastly?
Good evening. My name is Derek Wandera. This question goes to Petroleum Authority Uganda, but also the Honorable Minister. The oil has been, our oil has been termed the curse, the oil curse, because of a few dents that it came with, or it comes with, especially in the area in the area of human rights violations that arose. I want to hear, in terms of fast tracking, how far with some of these allegations and the issues that arose, and how have they been addressed? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those extensive questions. I would like to give the Honorable Minister the first chance to come and answer the set of questions. I think, yes.
Do I move there? I can answer from
I
here.
think so. Kindly.
Here?
Yeah, you can stay there.
All right. Thank you very much. First, for listening to us. The questions show that you listened. And so I just run through as quickly as possible to respond to the questions. If oil and gas is meant to drive our tenfold growth, what is it that we will need from everybody to make sure that we achieve this? My first need is for us to have more intentional and deeper analysis of every decision that we make, answering the three questions. Where is the money in the decision we are making? Where are the industries? And where is our energy, which we need to drive our economy? We needed to be more intentional. Why? Because whereas the first part of our journey required a lot of engineering, the next part of our journey requires knowledge. It requires more knowledge if we are going to capture the value, which is then going to translate into the tenfold growth. I've already spent a week with POW together with the other agencies in a week's retreat, causing this thinking, causing this analysis to happen, because Ugandans have so far looked at oil as investment, as sunk capital. Yes, we are happy to hear from POW that we have already contributed a lot to the economy. But the next phase is the productive phase, where it's more about what we get out. And so we need to deepen our knowledge in this segment. We need to deepen our core thinking. And I want to ask, especially finance, to set up a think tank, an oil marketing and value creation think tank, where people sit for days somewhere to analyze. Remember, the rest of the world does this, and by the time they come to us, they have done days and weeks and months of thinking. And every statement that is thrown at us is backed up by a lot of thinking. I think that whereas the other one was engineering, was what? For us to capture the wealth, which is now downstream as we go, we need to be more analytical, be more data-based in terms of decision making, be more think tank based thinking. And for me, once we do that, the rest, they have done a good job. The rest is okay. But for us to do this downstream, we need that. The next thing I want them to do is to support the related science and technology. To support the related science and technology, our colleague from PAO here mentioned those innovations that are not directly in oil, but they are being made possible now because oil exists. But have those been funded such that they turn into new industries? So this is a science and technology sector. And so my request is that part of the fund is actually dedicated to research, scientific development, innovation, working together with the universities, such that we are very, very intentional in participating in the upcoming stages. Then what are we willing to do to improve communication? Focus on Africa. Alan, that is one of the things that I already noted in the sector, that the communication is not sufficient. And because of that, insufficient is there, but not sufficient. And it's one of the areas, and I remember talking to you, I was in the other Ministry of Science and Technology, now I'm in the Energy Science and Technology. So communication, when you see some of the things like our children standing with placards, campaigning against, they just don't have enough information. They have not internalized what they are dealing with. And so that shows that they have not got the correct information from us. With all the knowledge that we have, why are we continuing to do oil when the popular campaigns are like, don't do oil? And this is what we would like to engage our young people. So we engage beyond just this media. Let's also have deeper engagements at the media center so that they can ask all the questions so that we are able to do this. Demonstrating to show, yeah, that is what I think I've moved into Kamgisha's question. The demonstrations, for me, are an indication of insufficient communication and engagement and thinking. If we can support these people to think deeper and understand, let me give an example. If globally, we measure that how much does Uganda contribute currently to the emissions? How many does Uganda contribute to the emissions globally? Eh? Almost nothing. Now, other countries which are polluting, they are continuing to use oil. They are continuing to use oil. So even if we shut down Uganda's economy and produce no emission, there will be no impact on the emissions. But those countries which are continuing to use oil, they are not stupid. They know how to balance the economic development and the livelihoods of their people with the emissions. So I would love to have special programs to engage our young people, and they see opportunities for themselves. Let me give you a small illustration. In 2000, we had an Ebola epidemic in Uganda. It killed a lot of people. And many people became scared. Even some people in the medical left the field. But you know what other nations did? They focused on finding a solution to treat Ebola. And now Uganda, in the last epidemics, so many of them, how many people have we lost? We have lost very, very few people. And most of those because they come late. So when a problem appears, we need to focus and find where the opportunities for these younger people to create a future for themselves by creating solutions to climate, not by putting up placards. I think I have one more. On a scale of 1 to 10, what, I don't know whether nation media you are asking, first of all, welcome back. I don't know whether you are asking the future or you are saying to what it is now. I found a figure that has been allocated to minerals development, including oil and gas. I think that figure is 25 billion, 20 billion. My effort at the Ministry of Energy is going to be to multiply that figure so many more times than that. I don't believe in working on tiny things. And with all the wealth that we have, and with innovation, we can make this a major, major contributor to the 500. And I'm promising that we are going to make it bigger. And when we have sat down together, I want them to tell me a proper figure. And I've told them how to do that. They have told me, they have given me 100 days to come up with that figure. Then we shall announce, and then everybody goes to work to yield that. Because if this, one of the major income earners for the country is only contributing 20 billion, where is the rest of the money going to come from? So we are going to drive ourselves a little bit more. So let's 1 to 10. I think I'll get that scale when we meet again to talk about the contribution. I don't believe that there is any borrowing which is happening against our oil. There is no borrowing against our oil. This oil, the investment is from private sector, and they are going to recover the money from the sales of oil. And Uganda is going to get our cut. So we expect all countries around the world are borrowing. Even developed countries. There is one developed country, very developed. Its debt ratio is 223% of its GDP. So borrowing is an infrastructure which exists globally, and nobody is selling our oil for this. Then the student from Makerere, I think in terms of, we shall pick up on this. It's one of the things on my action list to make sure that we are able to give you, because we have the practical sites now. Before, for example, oil extraction. Now we have an oil field which is built up. So why don't you go there and in turn and participate? We have minerals, so we don't have any reason now to do that, and we are going to intentionally build the downstream of value addition to you on that. I don't believe, after my presentation, that Uganda is going to be part of those that participate in the oil as a CAS. We intend to make a lot of value from oil, not only for growth, but for transformation. When our oil is finished, Uganda will not be a country that is dependent on oil. We'll have used the knowledge to transform what we produce and sell. Thank you.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we have more questions than we can answer now. So the takeaway from us at the center here is that we should have a system where we can take questions, those will be answered, and even those will have a follow-up, we can answer them in other ways, or through text, through email, but so that everyone who comes here and has something to ask, it's answered. Gloria had a question, and I think someone had a comment, Engineer Katunji. Just only two, and then we'll close it. Gloria, go.
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, our dear audience, for the questions. One was communication. Are we fully supported? We have platforms. We have a leadership that believes in communication. We are supported. Funding, we are still underfunded. We have leveraged on partnerships with industry players as we continue to push for more funding, and we look forward to working with the Media Center. Since Alan said this year, you're fully funded. Thank you. But we really believe in partnerships, both within government and outside government, to build and address any gaps. Environment conservation, as Dennis has said, this is a big question. It is one of our key pillars of regulation as the authority. The long-term strategies are there. They are based on scientifically done research and studies that have mapped out the potential positive and negative impacts of the oil developments. If you've heard of the environment and social impact assessments, many people think that they are just a document that's kept in the shelf. No, every year there are environment audits by multi-institutional government teams from NEMA, from Wildlife Authority, from the Water Resources Department. So we do audits, we do emissions monitoring, noise monitoring. We are working near protected areas, Makshon Falls National Park, which is a treasure for the country. And just a small example from Makshon Falls, there's been a lot of construction work. We have passed the peak of construction in Makshon, but it has remained pristine. Recently, there was a nice video of young lions in the park. There was a program of relocating giraffes. That means that the biodiversity is still intact, and we are achieving what we want, coexistence. But we do not sit back. We are aware of the potential pitfalls, and the beauty about today's digital world, if anything goes wrong in the environment, you cannot hide it. If there's an accident, an oil spill, degradation, you cannot hide it. Everyone has a smartphone. So we regulate as the authority, but we also work with the communities, with the local governments. There's a lot. There are monitoring plans for protected areas. There are waste management facilities. The waste that comes out of, we are talking of over 400 wells being drilled. We monitor the waste to the degree of how much waste in quantity comes out. How is the household waste treated? Luero Industries, our subsidiary from the UPDF, has a state-of-the-art waste management facility together with EnviroServe. People who have been to the field, we've gone with a lot of media, have been to these facilities. So it's not something that we are taking for granted. The practical initiatives are there, backed by the frameworks and research. The second question was emissions, environment strategy on emissions. Uganda has an energy transition plan. Uganda is signatory to international protocols on climate change. And the minister emphasized that our emissions are less than 0.000 point something percent. But where do our emissions come from as a country? Our emissions come from agriculture and poor land use practices. And our emissions do not come from energy, unlike other countries where you find 80% of their emissions are from the energy sector. So what do we need to do? Modernize our agriculture keep on using the best available technology. For example, in oil and gas, if you've heard stories from other countries, you've seen that black smoke that sometimes come out of industries or oil and gas fields. In Uganda, open flaring is banned, except if it's an emergency that can cause life. And so you never see that smoke. People who have gone to the fields, you've never found black smoke. That's emissions reduction. We are using solar and renewable energy to power some of the projects, and also using the gas that comes out or with oil. When you produce oil, it comes out with gas. So usually it's that gas that many countries burn away. But in Uganda, that gas, we have facilities. If you go to the industrial areas at the project sites, there are gas compression facilities to make sure that this gas is processed to provide energy, but also LPG. The Ministry of Energy a few years ago launched a big gas project where cylinders are being distributed. So this is part and parcel of the whole broader energy security, but also emissions reduction. I think the last question was on the oil cass, and I completely agree with the minister. There is no oil cass in Uganda, and it won't happen in future. Why? Because if you read the National Oil and Gas Policy of 2008 that James referred to, it was recognized as a potential negative impact. And how did government choose to guard against it? One is training people, but also ensuring that other productive sectors like agriculture, tourism, manufacturing continue to thrive alongside oil and gas. If you go down to Bulisa, I'll give you a practical example. In many other places, you find that the communities stop their activities and go to wait for oil jobs. Here, some of the private Ugandan investors have set up agriculture collection centers, and they are teaching the farmers, how do you meet export standards? Sometimes it's as simple as bring tomatoes that don't have soil, bring oranges properly measured in sizes, giving them those basic skills so that they supply the oil and gas camps, but also supply the export market, the hotels that are growing up, etc. That is how we are avoiding the oil cass. We are aware of environment conservation. And lastly, something that has been always postured are the rights of the communities, the project affected persons. We have gone through a very comprehensive land acquisition program that looked at cash compensation, physical resettlement, house for house, and then livelihood restoration. We've even worked with civil society to come and monitor at the height of all the contention and activism. We allowed third-party monitors from civil society internationally to come in. The projects would never have been funded if these things were found on the ground that are claimed. Yes, there are grievances that arise, and these grievances, there is a process right from the LC system upward to the courts of laws for those who feel aggrieved. And I'll tell you that of the 10,000 also project affected persons, the outstanding grievances could be less than 50. And so that is good for the project. Thank you very much. I hope we will be given more time to address the issues that keep coming up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gloria. 0.1 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'll be very quick. My name is Ronnie Katunji. I just have just 2 or 3 questions that I would like to ask the minister. The minister is, you are a lady of numbers. So I'm just asking some numbers questions. So currently a barrel of oil is about $85 per barrel. How much of that are we going to retain as Uganda? Because there are other players like Total, there is Sinok. So how much of it is going to Uganda of the $85 per barrel? Currently, only about 1% of Ugandans use LPG. Now, with Fast Oil, we're going to have a lot of LPG being produced in Tilenga and Kingfisher, which is over 5 times of what we consume as a country. Are we going to have the ministry using that as an opportunity to increase how much LPG, because that will save our forests and help with transition. Then lastly, it's about 20 years ago since Uganda discovered its oil and gas. And with the current resource, if we started producing oil right now, it is projected to run out in 20 years. So if we had started producing when we discovered it, by now it would be running out. But also only less than 50% of that area has been explored. So what are we doing in order to increase the resource? Because the results show that there is probably a lot more oil there to discover. But since 20 years ago, there has not been as much in that area. Thank you very much.
My name is Tom Angorini. I work with the Nation Media Group. When the government started developing the oil sector, they talked about building a thermal oil plant in the oil region using the oil that will come from the plant. Now, how far is the progress since people don't talk about, government ministries don't talk about, they just talk about the development, the progress of the ECOP, and when commercial production of oil will start. What is the progress so far on the on the thermal power plant, given the fact that, yeah, they talk about the oil refinery, but not the thermal power plant that they said they were going to build. Yeah, given the fact that the outgoing Omeme MD, when handing over to UEDCL, Omeme to UEDCL, said that in 2 years' time, projected that in 2 years' time, demand for electricity is actually going to surpass production. Now, another one is today, UBOS said that inflation has risen to 4%, basically mainly driven by energy. And this 4% is, yeah, energy. The inflation was mainly driven by energy, rising cost of energy. And then how sufficient enough is the country's storage capacity of oil, petroleum products, given the fact that the ongoing Iran US war and Saudi Arabia has now entered in, it is not, we are not seeing an end. How sufficient is the country's capacity of storage?
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. I'm a lady of numbers. I don't know. If I'm a lady of numbers, there is a formula, and I'm going to ask my friend here to help me from Petroleum Authority. But in principle, there is a formula. One, Uganda is a shareholder through UNOC, and we hold shares in these companies. Then two, the money is divided in the particular segments. The money that is used for production, the money that is used for the export, and then the profit that is left is what we are going to share. But as I said, she'll give us the exact numbers. And in terms of percentage, because the global fuel prices are going to keep changing, petroleum prices, because they are determined somewhere. LPG, there is a big plan for us to promote. We have a project at the ministry. We want to promote LPG, and would like to come back and talk to the nation specifically about the adoption of LPG as one of the sources, especially of cooking. We're going to run out. Pao, are we running out? of fuel. She's going to tell us what we are doing, but even now we are actively calling for people to come and do exploration. We still have oil. We wanted to learn from this one, which we have. We wanted to master. We have built a national capacity. That's why I'm saying that Uganda now needs to go deeper, even in these segments. And she will again talk about the thermal plant on the ground. The demand for power is rising. Yes, we know it is rising, and we are doing everything we can to go ahead of it. We have a mix, a power mix that we have put right now. Most of our electricity comes from hydro. We have planned to put up some new hydro plants to add. We are also going very big in solar. Solar is reaching maturity as a source of energy and is going to contribute to a bigger and bigger percentage of our energy mix. We are also working on nuclear power. We are actively working on that project. Because of time, I don't want to go into the details. And we are also working on geothermal. Uganda intends to largely in the energy to have clean energy. And then we shall be able to neutralize all the carbon that we emit, because we have compensated with clean energy. So even with our oil export, we are not going to contribute significantly to a difference in carbon emissions, because we have a very high percentage of energy. Don't worry, we will keep ahead of the demand.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for Gloria. You have some more information to give. Is that very brief, yeah?
Thank you. The questions were detailed, but I'll be very brief. So $85 per barrel. Uganda's share of the oil in terms of the production is governed in principle by what the minister said. We are a partner through UNOC. Secondly, there are different payments that come to Uganda from each barrel. There is a royalty, share of cost oil, then there are taxes. When the company makes taxes, we tax income tax, and then there is the profit. Above everything else, there's a profit which we share with the companies. So what we have is a sliding scale. It's not the same every year. It starts a bit less, about 60 to 65%. Then as the companies recover the money they've invested, our share goes up to 80% overall. So it's a sliding scale between about 65 to 80% on each barrel. Less at the start of production because they are the ones doing the capital investment. So every year they're allowed to recover up to a certain limit, not everything. They don't take. So government starts benefiting right at the start, and it increases as we go along in the 20, 25 years that Ronnie talked about. What I would clarify about the 20, 25 years of production, it's on the oil that we've discovered now that's going to be produced in Kingfisher and Tilenga. And Kingfisher and Tilenga are 10% of the Albertine graben that has been explored. So we have an area, we have some exploration licenses. The only one that is active now is the one held by UNOC, and they are looking for a partner as they do studies. So we still have additional potential in the Albertine, but we even have virgin basins like Kadam, Moroto, Hoima, and Shoga Basin. So there is potential in the country. Lastly, the thermal oil power plant. This was a project that was first brought to government by then Talo. Talo was the first investor. So in 2006, when we found crude oil, that was the height of load shedding. I don't know if you all remember those days of load shedding where every day, 12 hours. And so because of the expensive diesel thermal generators, so the project was to use the initial production of crude oil to generate power. But as more research was done and the government realized that we have a lot of potential for renewable energy. Remember, this power that comes from oil, especially, is not renewable. it can get finished also, and then would go back. And so that's when government started developing the larger hydropower dams. We have Isimba on board, we have Karuma, and there are a number of projects that Ministry of Energy is taking forward. So we no longer need to have that project. So it was shelved. Instead, what we have now is use of gas to power. So the gas that is being produced will be used to power the industrial developments there in the field, but also LPG, as I spoke about. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. As we close, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, Honorable Minister, and our distinguished panelists, and our versatile audience. You've been great, and I can promise you we'll make this better. We'll plan better so that whoever has a comment or question, it will be dealt with, even if it's not in this audience, but they will get the information back. And the other thing we take from here as a communications hub here is about communication and information. I think it was the former British Prime Minister, Tony Blair, when they asked him a question on a campaign trail, they said, what will be your 3 priorities in government? And he said, education, 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 3. So for us, it's communication, it's information, it's communication. We have great things and we are not communicating about them, then we are not doing our job. So thank you very much. We have a meal, you should not leave this food here. Feel free and have something to eat. We will invite you the next time we have such an evening. Thank you very much. Emma, you have something to say? Yeah.
I just want to add very quickly, first of all, thank you very much for your very strong submission. And I think if an opportunity presents itself, you have an executive director here. And when that happens, remember who recommended you. You like your current job. Okay, thank you very much. I think for us, want to say thank you to Uganda Investment Authority for making this possible. And we are going to continue coming to you for money to make things like this possible. And we want to encourage other MDAs to come to the media center so that they can explain their agendas as articulately as Dr. Musenero has, so that people understand what you're doing. Again, on behalf of the media center, welcome here. Thank you very much. And as my colleague Dennis has said, there is food that is available for you to eat and for God and our country. Peace where you. Let's sing the national anthem before we conclude. Peace.
For Uganda, may God uphold thee. We lay our future in thy hand. United people, liberty together we always stand. Mungu twaomba uilinde Jumuiya Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike, umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.